Hello and welcome to this episode of That's Interesting. I'm your host, Frank Hart. This show explores things that I find interesting. I hope you find them interesting too. The guest on this episode is Jack Swanson. Jack will share some Quincy trivia with us, being a lifelong resident of Quincy and still hasn't finished his term here yet.
Not yet.
Welcome to the show, Jack.
Thanks, Frank.
Yeah.
Frank, we go back a long time, you and I.
Yeah, 1979, actually.
We both joined the yacht club the same year.
Yep.
1979. Well, that's a few years ago now. I give the caveat, I was only 21.
I was a little older.
I know, but still, long time ago. But it's great to be on your show. And
well, thank you.
Yeah,
yep.
Quincy trivia. Well, first of all, I love Quincy. And, oftentimes, we talk about the Adams family ad nauseum, and that's great, but there's so much more to the city than that. And also, I can say that I am from an old Quincy family. Okay. We often think of, old families being wealthy. Well, my family goes back on, I guess the paternal side goes back to probably about 1850 thereabouts, right after the Great Famine. That's the Irish side of the family. Right. One thing that's so unique about the city that I really believe this. I think that Quincy, population near 100,000, has more in common with Bingham, Maine, population 780, than it does with Boston.
Do you? Yeah.
Well, I mean, everybody. They're both towny. Everybody knows everybody, or knows someone who knows somebody here.
Yep.
And we have some weird Quincy characteristics. I know we have two kids today here from Woodward School, and one of them mentions she's from Dorchester.
Yep.
Okay, and I joked. I said, across the river.
Right.
Okay, like my Boston accent, river. Anyway, when I was pastor of Union Con, which is on Ross Road in Wollaston, okay, if I needed toner for the copier, and one of the moderators, Bill Roberts, great friend of mine, Bill would drive to Weymouth to get toner. And I would say, Bill, why don't you go to Neponset? And look like I have two heads. And he says, that's in Boston, Pastor. Quincy people, it's like that river, like the DMZ. Yeah. We don't go into Boston. So you drive all the way to Weymouth. Just little characteristics like that. But it is a unique, I think it's a unique city. It's a great city. I love, being here. I got a couple of Quincy stories I'll tell you from my, from my family. First let's start with the monument there.
Yeah, could we bring up the picture, please?
Got a little picture here. Let's see, yep.
There we go.
This is at Mount Wollaston Cemetery. This is my grandfather. I was 13 when he passed. But the interesting thing about this stone, I want to point out there, Frank, number one, the obvious is Quincy granite. Is there any other type of granite? Okay, no, there is none. Okay, it is definitely Quincy granite. But I want to point out some unique things about this. Okay, Swanson. Okay, Cecilia M. Shea. This was my grandmother. Okay. Born 1890. She was born on Copeland Street in West Quincy. Okay, died 1943. Only 53 years old. And that was very traumatic for my dad. I think back to that, my father was only 23 years old. He was home on leave for his mother to die, and then he went off to the war. My grandfather, look at 2 years younger. Okay, Carl Gustav. Okay, it drives me crazy when I put the middle names on stones. It's actually Cecilia Maud Shea. And it will be Carl Gustav Swanson, 1892, so he's 2 years younger than her, died 1970. But the interesting thing about this stone, I like to point out, is if you look at the top of the stone here, you have the Sacred Heart of Jesus.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
Roman Catholic. Okay. Now, I grew up as the only Protestant kid in West Quincy. There might have been more of us, but anyway, okay. This is the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Okay. Cecilia Shea, good, the Shea side, good, solid, Irish, Irish Catholic and the like. And if you look at Grandpa, beneath his name, you have the Masonic symbol.
Right.
Which today Catholics can join the Masons, but back in the day, especially when they were married, I think 1911, thereabouts, I think it was, the idea that you would have a stone, and the story wasn't that stone was installed, that stone was installed when the Masonic emblem was put on when Gramps died in 1970. The guy from Monty called my father, and he said, "Are you sure I'm at the right stone?" Because once I do this, it's going to kind of be on there too. A little story about Cecilia, which I never met. I was born in '57. She died in '42. Really interesting thing with Cecilia. There's a story in my family. This is a really, really neat story here. It's a story in my family that my great-grandfather, Daniel Shea, blew himself up on Christmas Day, 1900. He was a city worker. He was called out for emergency, and he brought his sledgehammer down on a dynamite cartridge and blew himself up.
Oh.
So that was that. That's always been a legend that he died. Well, about a few years ago now, my kids were in school then. I live in Wollaston. I drove up to West Quincy to buy a pizza at Copeland House of Pizza, which back in the day, that was the pizza place to die for. Anyway, so I went to Copeland House of Pizza, and I order a pizza, and get a few minutes waiting for it. So I take a walk. And I walked across the street to that little Granite Workers Park in West Quincy. And that's also where I grew up, in that neighborhood. And I'm walking around the park, and all of a sudden I look down on the ground, and my foot is on a memorial brick.
Right,
Granite piece. For all
Yeah, because there's a lot of them on the ground there,
And my foot's
the
on
walkway.
it, and it says Daniel Shea,
Wow.
December 3rd, 1901, quarry blast.
Wow, yeah.
And all of a sudden, I realized that, this is my great-grandfather. And that myth that we're brought up with, that story, I found it was true. Now, my background, I was, history major. I went to Eastern Nazarene College, studied under James Cameron. And one thing Cameron really taught us how to do research. So I know how to do historic research. Right off the bat, I knew, okay, all myths, they drift from the truth a little bit. They drift from facts a little bit, okay?
They do, yeah.
It wasn't Christmas Day. It wasn't 1900. It was December 3rd, and it was in 1903. But still Christmas time. So I went up to City Hall, and I pulled his death certificate. And it said, it's a clinical language. It says, pneumatic drill he was holding came in contact with a dynamite cartridge. And it took him out and severely injured the guy that was tending the hose and that. So there's a death certificate. So, I now do research. So I go right across the street from there, made a copy of the death certificate.
Right.
Go across the street to the library, and I pull up the ledger. Thomas Crane, I don't know if they've all digitalized it now or not, but these are the reels. Goes right back to the first edition of the ledger. So I pull up the date. Now, back in the day, at 1900, the newspapers used to come out twice a day, for the most part. And I thought, a quarry blast, that's going to definitely make the news. So, I pull up the ledger, and I find the paper for the third afternoon edition. It's not in there. Okay, it's not a big deal. So I go to the next page, the fourth. Went through that. Couldn't find it. Went through the fine-tooth comb, and I finally found it on the back of the paper, where it said city worker. So now it's where it's changed a little bit from the fact. It wasn't a quarry blast, it was actually a city worker. Okay? City worker killed in the explosion. And I thought to myself, why wasn't this at least on, I would have thought that would have been on the front page under the fold. Maybe not the lead story, but I would have thought that would have been on the fold, or at least a second part. And then it dawned on me, and I'll be very colloquial here, it's an Irish Catholic Mick, who cares? Sorry, I mean, back in the day on that. Just a low-class worker, and perhaps that's why it didn't make the paper. So, that shocked me. So I did make a copy of that, and the ledger gave the location of the incident. And it was on Baxter Street, up by where the Salvation Army is now, going towards Quincy Point. So I drove up to Baxter Street, and I walked down the street, and there's the sewer manhole cover. And I sort of look at that, and I'm staring at that, because I'm feeling this real connection, going across, generations. Well, that must look a little peculiar, this guy staring at a manhole cover. So one of the neighbors came out, and he says, "Can I help you?" And I told him what I was doing, and he gets all excited. He says, "I'm a Boston sewer worker." He says, "I can tell you exactly how that happened." He says, "A lot of people think that a sewer is just a tunnel. Actually, it's not. It's a trench. This neighborhood's a lot of ledge." What he was doing, they were putting in the sewer line. So when you drill stone, you bounce the drill. You don't put it right there. You bounce it back and forth. So he's bouncing this huge, and back in 1900, they were these big, huge drills or the big air hoses. He's bouncing the drill back and forth, and while he's doing it, he has a satchel of dynamite cartridges. What
Yeah.
probably happened was a cartridge spilled out.
Yep.
Several maybe spilled out of the bag. He finally gets the hole ready for the cartridge, puts the drill down to get the cartridge, the drill bit, which is now hot,
Right.
from the
Set
granite,
it off, yeah.
sets it off, and that took him out.
Yep.
And then the worker told me, he says, and I'll tell you something else, these manhole covers, they never wear out.
Oh, right.
And the one you're standing on, most likely, is the one he went down.
Okay. Yeah. Yep.
And Frank, I just felt upset, just realized this connection across
Yep.
across the generations. And I went over. He's buried. I've known where he's been buried since I was a child. He's buried in St. Mary's Cemetery. And that's an interesting thing with that too. As I mentioned, he was a city worker at the time, which weren't paid very well. He had a very ornate gravestone, and I think that's because I think one of his sons made some money after in the next generation.
Okay. Yeah, that can happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So I went over to the grave there, and I'm thinking to myself, I wonder what Daniel would think of his Protestant minister grandson, Irish Catholic. But anyway.
Well, I have an Irish grandmother that was born in Ireland,
Okay.
actually, and to that point, her daughter, my aunt, married a Protestant, right? So this is like our parents' age.
Right.
And my Irish Catholic grandmother's version of that was, it's the same God.
It is.
That's what she said.
Yeah.
That's a family story from
Oh, yeah.
my side.
Yeah.
Was, yeah.
And it's also too, I think, also reflects the city of Quincy. Basically,
Yep.
it's just a family community type thing, and it doesn't mean doesn't mean as much with the with the divisions
Yeah.
as to like, which thankfully we don't have. Dad was father was a devout Catholic. Very proud of his Protestant son. He was a
Yeah.
crucifer I carried the cross at my ordination. But it's funny, that's the mix there of the Protestant Catholic. Cecilia Shea, heavy Irish Catholic, goes right back to the time of the famine. It also must have been rather traumatic for her. I think of that to have lost her father just before Christmas, 1903.
Yeah.
She would have been 13 years old.
Yeah, that's true. That must have been tough for her.
How
Yeah.
terrible that was, for her to have lost her dad.
Right.
At that age. Grandpa, my father's somewhat of a little mystery. Not as much as known about him, although I knew him. He died in 1970. He was a master carpenter, to be sure.
Yeah.
Very, very, very successful. Came from a more or less what they would call bourgeois upper middle class family in Sweden. So somehow he gets over here to Quincy and marries an Irish Catholic lady. But anyway, it's a little story with Grandpa. When I was early in my days as pastor at Union Kong, I was visiting this delightful elderly couple, and we're having tea together. And I looked up, I'm talking to her, and I said, I really like your cabinets. And she says, oh yes, a Swedish gentleman, he custom built these for us back in 1960.
Okay,
And I
yeah.
said, yes, I know, it was my grandfather.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Grandpa had a very distinctive valance over the window.
Okay.
Very, very unique. That was his signature there.
Yeah.
So that was the maternal side. Master carpenter. Towards the end of his life was a cabinet maker. Died 1970. My mother's side is interesting. This is the Protestant Scot side. Okay, as well.
Yeah.
Okay. That goes back to probably in the 1700s in Prince Edward Island. They came over during what they called the clearances in Scotland, which is about early 18th century. Grandpa came to Quincy from Prince Edward Island about 1900.
Okay.
Worked in the shipyard.
Yep.
And one day when he was in the shipyard, I think they were building the battleship Vermont, one of the early pre-dreadnought battleships. Inexperienced crane operator dropped a piece of sheet steel on a bunch of workers.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And my grandfather lost his leg.
Yeah.
Bethlehem Steel took care of him. They basically kept his job. They basically sent him up to be as a machinist, went through their apprentice program.
Yep.
And they took care of him. He worked for the yard for over 50 years
Well, that was good.
till
Yeah.
he retired.
Yeah.
But that's that's the Scott side. Interesting, the two family churches growing up as a kid. dad was an altar boy at Blessed Sacrament down in Howe's Neck and that. As my father came back from the war, World War II, they lived in Germantown, the projects, for a while.
Yep.
And then my mother was from the Quincy Point. And Mom was funny. For my mother, there were two Holy Lands.
Okay.
There was Jerusalem
Yep.
and Quincy Point. And Quincy Point, I think, had the upper hand. Okay, I mean, that's another part about Quincy, too. It's so towny with these neighborhoods.
Yeah, they're really tight-knit. And
Yeah. I mean, and even like my brother-in-law is from Mass Ave, and they talk about this great hill they would sled down, and it's like,
Yep.
okay, it's a hill, But I mean, Mom was from the Point, and that was like the new Jerusalem. Quincy Point Kong was the church that was the family church on my mother's side.
Okay.
But again, Quincy always had a very special relationship between Quincy Point and St. Joseph's. And my father always would do what was called his Christmas Easter duty. He would go to do Mass at St. Joseph's. And early on, one of a minister that was very formative, a couple of ministers in Quincy were formative, my own formation, or had an influence on me. One was my pastor, Roger Quam,
Yep.
First Presbyterian Church in Quincy. The other was Father Downey from St. Joseph's.
Okay.
Father Downey, that was my father's father's minister. Father Downey came to my installation when I became pastor of Union Kong. Came to my graduation from college.
Yep.
And throughout when I did my clinical work when I was in seminary, I wore his cassock. I couldn't afford a robe. I wore his cassock for the
Did you?
service.
Yeah.
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
He was much shorter than me. It came up to about my knees.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's just some of the great things about the city. And I think it's part of the city. I mean, so many, Lee Remick
Right.
came
right.
from Quincy. Billy DeWolf,
Yep.
another one there, which most people.
We have Ruth Gordon, the
Of course,
amphitheater.
Ruth Gordon, the
Yeah.
amphitheater. Most people think of Billy DeWolf. They don't really know who he is until you mention anyone of, say, my age and a little younger or a little older. You mentioned Frosty the Snowman.
Yeah,
He was
yeah.
a professor in that, and everyone will know that. John Cheevers
Yep.
was from, I think he lived in Wollaston.
Okay.
And also, here's a little bit of trivia that a lot of people don't know, and that is that Wallace Simpson.
Yeah.
Okay, Wallace Simpson, the woman which the king gave up the crown.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right. Okay. If you
Yep.
watch the series, The Crown, this was on Netflix. So you
Yep.
your portrayal of her. Her second husband was Win Simpson, who was the executive officer of the Swanson Naval Air Station.
Oh, was he? Yeah.
So Wallace Simpson lived in Quincy for a time.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the lake. Other things with Quincy, it's kind of unique. We're talking Quincy trivia here. Is the air station.
Right. Yeah.
One thing that I would love to see the city or somehow do is get some sort of airplane or something on one of those old runways over there. Because that is a famous air station in aeronautic history.
Yeah, because if you go to a lot of these Air Force bases, they have what's affectionately called the plane on the stick.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's something like that. They have a monument there, a pillar, with some type of airplane on top of it, and from the era. So if that would be nice if they could get something like
something
that
like
over
that.
there,
Yeah,
just to commemorate the fact that there was the Naval Air Station.
Yeah, and
because that goes where,
Yeah.
as I understand it, Amelia Earhart learned how to fly there.
Charles Lindbergh flew out of there.
Did he? Yeah.
He did. Lindbergh flew out of there, and also the first woman to fly across the English Channel,
Yeah.
Harriet Quimby,
Okay.
flew out of, and it wasn't, what was it called? It wasn't the Naval Air Station. I guess Senior Mall, I think of the name, what it was Denison's Airfield.
Okay.
That goes right back. Early aviation, they would have the Harvard Aero Meet every year.
Yeah.
President Taft came to it. Harriet Quimby, she fell out of her airplane.
Oh, did she?
Oh yeah, that's how she died. It was tragic.
Oh,
She did a loop, wasn't
Yeah.
strapped in properly, and she fell to her death. It's funny. The thing with Quimby, any historian, aeronautic historian, will tell you, in some ways she has more of a claim to fame than even Amelia Earhart.
Does she?
Oh yeah, she was the real pioneer. I mean, Earhart was 20 years later. Planes were much newer and the like.
Yeah, and the fact that they never found her.
I know, that's a
so that's
fascinating
a
thing there. That's the
mystery
mystery of
that'll
that. Yeah,
will
but
keep
she
her
was-
story going.
She
Yeah.
flew out of Quincy, and of course we have the Quincy shipyard.
Right.
All the ships that were built, built there.
Yep.
One of my favorite ship stories from the shipyard is the battleship Nevada.
Okay.
Battleship Nevada was built, I think, 1912, thereabouts. Yeah, about that time, laid down. Anyway, the Nevada was at Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
It was the only battleship to get underway.
Oh, okay.
From
Yep.
Pearl- from
yeah, because
Pearl
one
Harbor.
escaped though. Yeah.
Yep, she got out. Served throughout World War II. Was off Normandy,
Yep.
as well as in the Pacific. She was at the end of the war. She was decommissioned. She was painted a bright orange,
Orange. Yeah.
and she was the central target of the first bikini atomic test.
Okay.
That's why she was
yeah.
orange, so the pilots couldn't possibly
see it, yeah.
miss her there. Well, she survived that,
Wow. Yeah.
and then she survived a second atomic test. And then she was finally, towed so radioactive. I mean, you could cook on it. She was so hot, but she
Yeah.
was brought out to sea, and then she was fired upon by the battleship Wisconsin. Still didn't sink, and then she was finally sank by an aerial torpedo.
Yeah.
But in a sense, I love this little bit of trivia here with that. In one sense, the Nevada had the last laugh as she sank.
Okay. Which is.
After Pearl Harbor, when she was brought back to be, to be rehabbed, go back into service, there was a copper shortage.
Yeah.
During the war. If you remember, they used to have steel pennies and the like.
Right. Right.
It's a
yeah.
real copper shortage. So in the engine room, she was what they called electric drive.
Yeah.
And they had these huge, they're called busboards. They had these huge, in the engine room, huge solid copper plates where would have the switches on it and all that
Yeah.
to conduct electricity. Well, there was a tremendous shortage of copper. So what they did was they replaced the copper with silver from the U.S. Mint.
Yeah. That conducts very well.
Very
yeah.
conducts well,
Yeah.
and they painted it black. And the
Yeah.
idea was when the ship was scrapped, they would take the silver out. Well,
Yeah.
no one got the memo.
So the silver went down with the.
Yeah,
Okay.
she was so radioactive.
Yeah.
You couldn't get the silver off it. But, oh yeah. But anyway, yeah, there's a little bit of trivia there. But yeah, and we have our yacht club, of course.
Yeah, and Quincy has what? In Quincy we have multiple yacht clubs. We have Swanham, Wollaston, Quincy, Town River.
Town River, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah we do. Plus
So
the
we
new the marina that the city has.
Yep.
Yeah. Quincy has.
There's I forget the name of it, but there's another small yacht club over in Germantown.
There is Gull
Gull, yeah,
Point, yeah.
Gull, yeah.
That's right too, yeah.
And Quincy celebrated their 150th anniversary. First club in Quincy.
And what, yeah?
A couple of years ago. Last year? Maybe it was last year or the year before. I think it was last year.
Wow, yeah. It's so
150,
funny where
yeah.
people hear the word, yacht club, and they
Oh, yeah.
automatically think, Thurston Howell III. And come on, if you and I can afford to be part of a yacht club, I mean, anybody can.
Right, Rodney Dangerfield dropping the anchor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
there's a story of as if you probably know the story. Yacht clubs have reciprocity.
Right.
Where if you have a
Yeah.
yacht club, you go to any yacht club in the country. Well, anyway, do you remember Don McGilvery?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don was in Bermuda,
Yeah.
and he was going to go to the Royal Bermudian Yacht Club. And this is a real yacht club. I mean, this is what Prince Charles is the honorary Commodore.
Oh, yeah. Unreal.
Right. So
By the book.
he had borrowed, I think Christie's,
Christie's, yeah.
borrowed Christie's membership card from Boston Yacht Club Marblehead, which is, to be honest, it's sort of a social step up above us.
Quite, yeah.
Anyway, so Don shows they asked for his card, so he shows a card from the Boston Yacht Club from Marblehead.
Yep.
And the maitre d' says, "I'm sorry, sir, we don't recognize that yacht club. Might you have another?"
Right.
And Don says, "Well, I just have this. It's a small workingman's club in Metro Boston." He pulls out a Squantum Yacht Club, and the maitre d' is like, "Oh, Squantum Yacht Club, yes, sir, please come in."
Yeah, welcome past Commodore
Right.
McGilvery, right?
Yeah, and what it was Squantum paid the $50 to get in the book.
Yeah.
and Eastern Point hadn't.
Yeah. And
Anyway.
I mean, for a little bit more into that story, as I remember,
Okay, yeah.
because of the way the club was organized and how formal it was, Don went through one door through the club, and his wife Nancy had to go around.
Really?
She couldn't walk through the club. I heard that as part of that
Probably
story.
is, yeah, probably his Commodore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes it's funny, the reciprocity. That's why yacht club is one of the best deals in the world. Years ago, the kids were little. We used to spend a lot of time up at Boston, at the Boston Yacht Club. They have rooms.
Yeah.
And there was, I mentioned to the, maitre d' that I was the past Commodore of Squantum Yacht Club. And he said, "Oh, yes, well, Commodore, may I introduce you to your counterpart?" So he introduces me to the rear Commodore of Boston Yacht Club. I get back to my table. They had a little flag on the table, which my Commodore's flag. It's just such a cool thing.
Well, my oldest daughter got married at Eastern Point.
That's a great club.
A nice club.
Yep.
And we went up there for the wedding, and we were there ahead of time. At that point, I was nothing more than the father of the groom, and we can ignore this guy.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, they're starting to talk to me. My son told me, I told him you were the rear Commodore at Squantum. It was like, oh, rear Commodore. Oh, what can we get? Here, take this, take this. They're just so nice. Yeah. It's very nice.
They are. I used to do retreats at Gonzara Retreat House, which is on Eastern Point.
Yep.
And always at the end of the retreat, it was a silent retreat for 8 days. At the end of the retreat, I would stop off at Eastern Point and have a drink and then go home. And one year I stopped by there, and I got there once a year.
Right.
And I stopped by the yacht club, and again the club manager's there, and he says, "Oh, Reverend Swanson, so good."
It's amazing they remember you, yeah.
And
from one time.
Yeah, he goes, "That's so good to have you here again."
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, the club is closed because we have a function coming up. But I'll make sure you have a drink. But please come in.
Yeah.
Comes in, and the bartender says, "Oh, Reverend Swanson, so good to see you again. Dark and stormy."
Yeah.
I'm like, from a year ago.
Yep.
And so, our Irish heritage is very gregarious in conversation with anybody. So in a conversation with the bartender, he told me that in clubs at that level, they're paid very, very well. The staff, they're paid very, very well. In fact, tipping's discouraged because they're paid very, very well. But part of that, they're expected to remember guests and remember their drinks.
Wow, yeah.
And so, of course, we're probably this guy, how many minutes they come in, pops in there, so he remembered me and had that. But just a great, and even, I don't know if you've experienced this, Frank, I often find that the more higher-end clubs are much more accommodating and laid back than the more blue-collar clubs. I've experienced that.
I don't have the...
Yeah, I have a couple times with that, but...
don't have the history to say whether that's true or not.
But it was just a great time there. But a little sailing story there. I've been a sailor... Yeah, since you knew me, I was a sailor since I was 20. When the kids were little, we had a 26-foot Pearson Ariel, just a great sailboat.
Yep.
And I, people say, people like sailing because it's relaxing, and that it is. But to me, it's more just the skill of being able to sail something without a motor that's 6,000 pounds and maneuver it. That's the fun part of it. I've never gotten the racing bug at all.
Neither have I. I mean, you certainly don't go straight as in a powerboat to get from here to there.
I hate racing. To me, life is neurotic enough without adding in the racing aspect. But
especially with some of the skippers.
Oh my God! Oh, gee.
Yeah.
I have a friend of mine who shall remain nameless. Just bought a great big boat. Anyway, I went out racing with him last couple of years ago. It was on the Thunderbird, and the boat's totally stripped down. It's totally weighs nothing. So, and this guy's like, the gun goes off. It's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Anyway, I stepped in the bight of the line.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'm like thumbtacked in the mast, and he gives me this dagger-eyed look because now he's going to have to come about. And I looked at him and I said, "Hey, I'm fine. Keep this tack." "Oh, okay, Jack." So he cranked it. I'm like, and I was like thumbtacked to the mast for like 2 miles. And we won, but I'm like tied to the mast. I had this big welt across my chest the next day. But anyway, a little story with that Pearson. I've never liked racing, but I do like the Lipton Cup, which is one of the great events we have at the club. And Don McGilvery came up to me. This is the last year when they had the PHRF. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yep.
Okay.
PHRF.
Yeah. And that's for the bigger boats.
Right.
Okay, and anything from 26 feet up to 100 feet, you're considered a yacht, a first-class yacht.
Yep.
Okay. So Don comes up to me and he says, "Jack, I need you to race tomorrow." And I was good friends with Don. I said, "Don, you know me, I hate racing." He says, "No, I really need you to race. And I promise you, if you race, you'll get a prize."
Yeah.
And I go, "Don, I really don't." He says, "No. I have 2 boats in the PHRF. I have to have 3. Please do that." I said, "Okay." So I did it for Frank. I did it for Don. So anyway, so we're out on the line, and I have Bob Boosie. That's a Quincy character to have. Okay.
Yeah.
I have Bob Boosie, the guy from my church. We're out on the line.
Well, just sidelight for Bob. He actually ran for mayor of Quincy one
Bob
time.
was. Yeah, story of Bob.
Let's not get too far into Bob.
I know. Well,
Continue
Bob
your
was,
story. But, yeah.
Bob was Bob, I'll tell you. Anyway, we're out on the line, and fully expect to come in dead last. I'm only out there for Tommy Gilbert. All of a sudden, I look up, and here comes the Queen Mary.
Yeah.
This huge yacht with about 64 feet long, Kelvar sails.
Yeah.
And the guys there, his little blue. He actually had the blue blazer on.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he flies by me, then comes about to get in position, and right back at him is the Queen Elizabeth. same these huge yachts.
Yeah.
So the gun goes off. Those two boats take off, leave us in the dust.
Yeah.
Well, we did the race. We went around all the marks. We're having fun.
Yep.
Well, we get back to the yacht club, and Thurston Howell III comes up to me, and he says, I say there, old man, I don't think you went around all the marks.
Yeah.
And I go, Gary did. What were they? I told him what they were. He goes, well, I don't think you went all the marks. I'm thinking, well, what's the big deal? I came in dead last. So he goes up there. Well, so he climbs up the gangway.
Did he protest?
And he was about to. We had gone around the marks.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I came in last. What's the big deal? My
Right.
boat's worth about $10 compared to what his is worth. I mean, his sail was worth more than my whole
Oh,
boat.
sure. Those Kevlar sails?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And so anyway, Don comes up laughing to me.
Yeah.
And he says, you're not a racer. I go, no, Don, I hate racing. He goes, so you don't understand what handicapped is. I go, people? He goes, no, boats.
Yeah.
Your boat is so much smaller and older than theirs that you have quite a handicap.
Right.
You're actually in first place.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because, I mean, that whole PHRF
Right, that's
is based on handicapping the boats.
right.
So that, and normally on a PHRF race, those boats will start at different times so that everybody finishes at the same time.
Right.
They call it a chase race.
Right, exactly.
But,
Great
but it
chase.
can also work the other way, is that everybody starts at the same time, and then your time gets adjusted at the end. It's like the Marion to Bermuda races
Right,
is
yeah.
handicapped. Everybody leaves at the same time, and based on your
It's a handicap when you get there,
is
yeah.
where you finish. Yeah.
It worked out. I still came in third,
Okay.
but it still worked out. I got a nice little pewter cup with it there. But,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, Bob was a character and a half, though. I mean, I would share a little story with him. Bob Boosie lived in Ward 3. Real Quincy character. Real good heart, actually. I was sailing with Bob. We were sailing up to Marblehead.
Yeah.
And, Bob was late showing up, so I wanted to make the tide, so we rushed to the boat. So we've just passed Long Island, coming up to what's called, what we call the highway.
Yeah.
Going up to the big buoys, the B buoy heading up to Marblehead.
The main channel up there. Yeah.
Getting up there. Anyway, so Bob, it's beautiful, crisp October day, and Bob goes down into the in the cabin of the boat, and he's running around the dishes, and I call and said, Bob, what are you doing? And he says, I'm trying to find, I'm looking for your compass. Where's your compass? And he said, I left it on the kitchen table. So he looks at me and goes, we don't have a compass? I go, no, we don't have a compass. We're going to Marblehead. You can see the town hall right there in the distance. I pointed to it. So he looks at me and he says, so you're a minister, and you know all the Bible stories, right? I go, well, yeah. He goes, don't you know most of the stories in the Bible? I go, yeah. He goes, well, don't you sort of like to carry a Bible around so you can look at it sometimes?
Yep. Same with the compass,
That's
right?
a compass. You know where you're going, but it's kind of nice to have it with you.
And we sailed up there. It was quite a while ago because I haven't done much sailing lately. And quite a while ago, we sailed up there on a beautiful day. Woke up in the morning. You couldn't see anything. It was so fogged in. Luckily, I had my compass.
Oh, yeah.
This was before GPS and all that. So,
Yeah.
so
And we got scared. Bob and I got stuck one time. We sailed down to the canal. Went through the canal, came back,
Yeah.
and the motor died. So it's not a big deal. We just sailing, back with it. But the fog came in,
Yeah.
and it was very, very light air. Fog came in. It took us 27 hours to get from the entrance of the canal, and the fog finally lifted. We just kept a compass course. We couldn't see where we were going.
Right.
And when the fog lifted, we found we were off Logan Airport.
Oh, okay.
We were overshot, but that was okay. We were keeping a wide berth.
Yeah,
But the fog can be really that can be a frightening thing there. But, wow.
Yep.
But your boat now. That's the second. That's not the boat you had when you joined the club.
No, it's the second one.
Okay. So I remember. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Owned it since 81.
That's a Bristol, right?
Yep.
What year is it?
71.
Okay, older one. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great. That's similar to the Ariel, isn't it?
Yeah, they're similar. They're full keel.
Full keel and the like. Yeah.
Yeah. 6,000 pounds.
Yeah, it's the same as what the Pearson is.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Nice boat. I've owned it since 81. I must like it.
And now it's a long time. It's over 40 years now.
It'd be a long time to keep something you didn't like.
I'll be sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how I got the boat was we were it's at my first church, which was down in Middleborough, and we were married a couple years, and Martha said if you want Martha got in the family way, and she said if you want the big boat, now's the time to buy it. So it was this beautiful condition. It was down at the shipyard in Hingham, and the fellow wanted $12,000 for it, and I laughed. There's no way I can afford that.
Yeah.
So the broker said, "Well, how much could you pay?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know, $5,000 maybe." He said, "No, that's ridiculous. How much could you really pay if you had to?" I said, "Well, the most I could pay was $6,000."
Yeah.
So he says, "Oh, make the offer." He's not going to take it, but you make the offer. So I offered the $6,000, and then I left the boat yet. I'm thinking, you moron. You only have $3,000 in the bank. Come on, how can you possibly? You can't afford $6,000.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, well, it's okay. No one's gonna, he's not gonna sell it for that. I get back home, and there's the broker says, he'll take 10. And I said, no, I can only do 6. And that's it. It's not coming back. Calls back a day later. You know what? He really liked you when he met you.
Yeah.
He'll take 8. I'm going, I can't do 8. Now I'm getting a little bit nervous.
Yeah, you might take the 6, yeah.
So finally, he called back a couple hours later, and he says, Jack, you drive a hard bargain. He likes you, and you can have it for 6.
Yeah.
And that's where basically we scrounged for the money. We got it, and it was the best $6,000 we ever spent. We had that boat for well over 20 years. The kids grew up on it.
It's so nice with the kids on the boat.
Oh, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is.
That's special.
Yeah, I have 2 daughters, Stephanie and Cassandra.
Yep.
Totally different personalities, like as most kids are. Cassie's the real sailor.
Right.
Yeah. She was our launch operator for a time.
She was for a while, yeah.
Yeah.
I was the launch chair at that time.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, she's doing that, and she's now. Ready for this, Frank? She's now a chief engineer.
Nice. Yeah.
She could be the chief engineer of the Queen Mary if she wanted, the little Queen Mary.
Yeah.
But I went to Mass Maritime and the like. And Stephanie's doing real well. Stephanie's out in Nebraska. God, this kid, how did she get out in Nebraska? But
pretty far from the ocean.
A little bit, yeah. I have a Quincy, Nebraska story for us there, though. Stephanie went to a wonderful college out in Omaha. That's when she met a guy out there.
Yeah.
My son-in-law. Who I hate, but I tell him it's nothing personal. I'm required, as you are, we're required by law to, just like our sons-in-law. He's a great guy, really great guy, takes care of it. Anyway, Stephanie worked through college. She worked as a waitress, and she's a few years after college. And really nice restaurant in the Old Market District of Omaha, sort of like our Faneuil Hall.
Yeah.
And so I'm out there, and her restaurant manager, he had been to Quincy.
Oh, he had, yeah.
He had been to Quincy.
Yeah.
And we're talking about it, and he said, so you're Stephanie's dad, you're from Quincy. And I said, I got to tell you, you people in Quincy, you're absolutely insane. And I go, well, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We know that. And I go, well, why? He goes, I couldn't believe I was out there. I'm driving through your city, and you had a CVS and an auto dealership on prime waterfront property.
Okay.
And I look at him and I go, no, it's not prime waterfront property. That's the back river. That's a marsh.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and he goes, have you noticed you're in Nebraska?
Yeah.
He goes, you know what we would do with that out there? And it's true. The Missouri River runs through Omaha.
Okay.
And they get every ounce of use out of that river. There's a beautiful water park. It's got a footbridge over the river.
Yeah.
Just really, really beautiful. I guess out here we take it that you would not have a CVS and an auto dealership on waterfront property in Nebraska.
No.
Not here.
No, not here.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Well, I think we're winding up
Oh,
now,
thanks,
Jack.
Frank. I really enjoyed it. This is a
Yeah,
great
thanks for
form.
coming.
Great form. I hope it was interesting today.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a little bit of Quincy trivia
Oh,
in
yeah.
and
This
a little
is
bit of our
great.
stories,
Yeah,
too.
our
and-
story. It's a great. It is. I'll tell you. It is.
Yeah.
It is just a great city. I'm very happy to live here. I just like how I think things are going well in the city. It's beautiful. Some of the Mount Walton Cemetery, how that's been
the
done.
City's done so much
Striking.
work lately, yeah.
Just striking.
Really
looking.
nice.
Just
Yeah.
that cemetery gate and the like.
Yeah.
New police station. But yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So, okay, so we're now at the end of this
All right.
episode. I want to thank my guest, Jack Swanson. Thank you, Jack.
Thank
for,
you, Frank.
being
Thanks
with
for
us.
having me.
And I also want to thank Joy and Ruby from
Kids
the
at
Woodward
Woodward.
School for the Girls for helping us crew today. And thank you for watching this episode, and I hope you stay interested.
Okay. God bless. Thank you, Frank.